Hello, CFF athletes, and welcome to another presentation, probably one of 10 that I've done. This one's based on metabolic profile and race planning. So hopefully everybody gets something out of this presentation that's coached by me, whether you're sprint, Olympic, 70.3, 140.6 type athlete, at least some of this will apply to you. I'm going to read the information I have here so I don't miss anything, and I'm sure I'll add a little context to it as we go. So as CFF triathletes start training for longer distance races, I start the race planning. Part of race planning is picking power and pace targets that will meet your race time goals, that are within your projected capabilities on race day, and that you can adequately fuel and hydrate. You need to rehearse the plan in key training sessions, and we need to check and adjust as needed. To better understand these demands, I personally complete physiological testing. I do this for the bike and run, and it's by AeroTune. I've used Insight in the past. It's very expensive. AeroTune's $30 for a test, and actually that gives you a full 30 days of testing. So what follows is my example. It creates the CFF defaults for percent carbs versus fats if I don't have specific AeroTune test data for a CFF athlete. Therefore, it's an estimate at my best. So what I'm saying there is Avery and myself are the only ones that have went through this metabolic testing by AeroTune. It's very difficult testing, but you get good data out of it. So I think it's worth the discomfort. You can always let me know if you're interested in getting tested. So for my example, for the bike test, the values for VLA max and fat max power were suboptimal back in February. They had me train differently considering my A race for the first half of the year is the 70.3 Door County. And what I mean by suboptimal is I just rely on carbs and my anaerobic engine too much to sustain even the power that I do for 70.3. So I changed my training quite a bit, started that in March, and it continues. So the values that we're speaking of here, well, the VO2 max, that's interesting. We always want VO2 max to be high. Higher is better. We can increase VO2 max by just pretty much any training that we do, or we can do those hard zone 5 VO2 max type intervals. So higher is better within reason, but it's probably not the key metric for an athlete that's well trained. For someone like me, it's more important to optimize VLA max, critical power, and fat max power. VLA max for a triathlete doing 70.3 should be 0.4 or lower, and you can see my value back in February was 0.72. So that's all the years that I've trained and raced for motocross, for mountain bike racing, for cyclocross. It's a lot of short, hard efforts. And I guess I probably am a little bit more fast twitch muscle fiber dominant. So therefore my VLA max is pretty high, 0.72 versus the 0.4 or 0.3 that we'd want to see for long distance triathletes. The other one that's a little bit off for me is fat max. Like to see this number be as high as it can be, relatively speaking. For me, it's 179 watts where I'm burning the most amount of fat that I can. And I'd rather have that be higher, and that's trainable. So 179 could be 189, 190, and therefore I can do that type of effort or slightly above it for racing, and I will burn more fat than carbs. So you can shift that over time, reduce your VLA max, increase your fat max power, and good things happen on race day. What usually comes along for the ride with proper training is our improvement of our FTP, which is also known as critical power. So these all go hand in hand, and it really does matter what type of training you're conducting on how you influence these metrics. If we don't know what they are by testing, we just have to do our best educated guess based on what I know about you as an athlete. The metabolic profile goes a little bit deeper. So it gives you, first in this upper left, it gives you what you can do for certain time periods. So we're going to use the 5-hour example here because that's about how long it takes for me to complete a half Ironman triathlon. So for my example, I'm using the bike data, but it's going to be similar on the run. It's going to be similar on the swim. It's kind of that zone 3 intensity. But let's go with the 5 hours. And if you look at this 5 hours and thinking about the bike, if I feel at 90 grams per hour for carbs versus 30 grams for carbs, it's a 37-watt difference. So imagine that, just by proper fueling, I can get 37 more watts out of my body. I can get 239 watts for that duration with proper fueling. So that's the maximum I can expect to do on race day. And you can extrapolate that over the run and over the swim, even though the wattage would be different. It's just that intensity again, zone 3. So problem we have, of course, and that's the second chart, is just that I wanted to use a lower wattage because I feel like July heat, I'm not going to be able to do the maximum 239 because heat will rob us of our power. So I went with 220 watts. And in my example, at 220 watts, I can circle that here. At 220 watts, I burn 99 grams per hour of carbs, 45 grams per hour of fat, and 10 grams per hour of protein. So I converted that to calories. Remember, fat grams are more calories per gram. So it's 4 calories per gram for carbs, 4 calories per gram for protein, and 9 calories per gram of fat. So that's the breakdown of my caloric energy requirements per hour, what I burn, I should say, and that's 841 calories per hour. All right, moving on. So that goes into the race plan, and it helps understand what our intake needs to be. Remember, I said that if I can take in 90 grams of carbohydrates on the bike, that would be great. I haven't really been able to hit that number, so when I do my race plan, I use about 80 grams. So for that type of information, I try to summarize it in this box that's underneath your chart. And on mine, it says the heat mix for infinite run. I'm going to use that throughout because I really do like it. I'm going to have 2 bike bottles on my frame. They're going to have 4 scoops of infinite heat mix per bottle. I'm going to use just plain water from the Aero Bar bottle. And I'm going to drink those kind of stronger frame bottles and mix it with the water. And I'm going to just kind of watch how I'm consuming those bottles. I know I have these 2 strong bottles to use up before the bike leg is done. So I'm going to just make sure I get one done at about the halfway point, sipping every 10 to 15 minutes. And then I'm going to use the second bottle and I'm going to just drink the water as I need to kind of rinse it down and help dilute it. Obviously, if it's super hot, I'll probably grab a little bit more water. So on the plan, I have adding in another half bottle of water, 10 ounces. And again, that's going from a secondary source, which is the Aero bottle that I have, and I can refill that as needed during the race. So the summary works pretty good because it's just trying to break all the data that's in the chart down to a simple nutrition strategy. I'll call it race day fueling. And then on the run, I have 2 flasks that have 2 scoops each, so they're concentrated in my jersey pockets. But I'll dilute those with water from the aid station. So I'll drink from the flask, and when I see a water station coming up, and then I'll drink some water and do that every 1-2 miles, depending on how often I feel the need and how often they have water stations. Of course, I'm going to use the ice as needed. I'm going to put water on my head, try to keep the body as cool as possible, especially if it's a hot day. So by putting this all into my chart, I can see what I need to feel per hour. I can break it down. I can give this overview. Of course, the times are in here. So that's here. These are times that are estimated based on what I've seen in training and what I think is proper considering your status. So if you can exceed these numbers slightly, great. If it's a hot day or you're not feeling it or things aren't going as well as we thought they could, you can go lower. You have time estimates there, and you have estimates that are either power or watts. So for this, I should say they're either seconds or watts. For the swim, it's seconds, right? So I have 120 seconds, and that's per 100 yards. That's what I expect to swim in the rough waters at the Door County Triathlon. That's 88% of my swim threshold speed, comfortably in zone 3. Then we go onto the bike. I have that 220 watts in for the bike, and I've averaged about 22 miles per hour at 220 watts during training. So I used 22.4 because on race day we get a little bit more of the drafting effect. Again, that's 79% of my FTP, and that falls safely into the zones. Last but not least is the run. I expect to be able to do that at a 9-minute per mile pace, maybe slightly faster. 245 watts in training has brought me into that like 850 versus 9-minute. It's in that range. And there, of course, I believe that 83% is a safe place. It goes, again, well into the targets that I have on the far right. These targets change a little bit. I might lower the targets, even if they're not on your sheet. I've considered these targets, and I might have you on the low end because say that you're taking 8 hours for your 70.3. You just probably will not be able to go zone 3 the entire time. You might need to go a little bit more into the zone 2 outputs. So that's what the difference is. Another thing here is I look at calories out. I use the numbers for the AeroTune test. And again, if I don't have numbers from you, I probably am just using numbers that I do have as estimates, just to try to understand what your calorie burn is in total and what percentage from carbs versus fat. And then we're looking at calories in and bottles consumed in. Based on those two, I can work on what's the percent loss of your body weight. And therefore, there's some standard numbers. I've went back and forth. Mine came out with 3.4%. That's kind of that green-yellow range. Ideally, 3.4%. You know, it's kind of on that verge where you could start losing some output, but it's not significant. So again, based on what you have, you might have 3, you might have 4%, you might have 5, but anything that's over 4% is definitely going to be in the yellow range. 5% would be yellow. And I do have a chart I refer to, but I believe 6 is in the red, 7 is in the red. So it's just looking at what we're taking in for fluids, what we're taking in for calories, and are we doing what's optimal considering what we have projected for race times and outputs. So I think that's pretty understandable. Moving on. So then with Door County, what I need you to do, each one of us has to be responsible for learning what there is about the race. So we can learn that from maybe joining a Facebook group that gives us information from previous people that have attended. But what I like to do is go to the race source itself. Door County just posted this, so if you didn't know that, they have course lectures, the full lecture, event overview, swim, transition area, bike, run. So you can get all these details in video format, and you can do it for the sprint or you can do it for the half iron distance. So it's really good to go to their website, get all those details. So I'm coming up on 15 minutes. Hopefully you found this to be insightful. I believe you all have good starting points for your Door County race plan. Remember, these are not absolutes. It's not a number that you want to be tied to and not have any wiggle room. One thing I do here is I just try to do my best to get a number that's achievable on race day, but I don't want that to hold you back if you're feeling better. I'd say save it for the last half of the run if you can. Be at least somewhat conservative until you get to the run and know how you're feeling in that first half of the run. So again, swim, bike, it takes a little bit of holding back if you want to have a decent run, and just be cautious with that. So like, of course, ask me if you got questions, send me a message and I'll get back to each one of you. Thanks and have a great day. And above all else, have a safe and wonderful experience at your next triathlon, which for many of us will be Door County.